Curse of the Kichai Shaman, Chapter 21. Ethan Talks. Ethan had been moved to Baylor Scott & White in Waco, Texas, and booked under the false name Thomas Rivera. He was guarded by 3 special agents named Biller, Jones, and Newman of the FBI who took turns. Every 4 to 6 hours they would change the one guarding Ethan. They did not use a set schedule, but mixed it up. It was estimated that Ethan had to only spend 5 more days in the hospital, then he could go to the Federal Correctional Institution in Seagoville, Texas, near Dallas. On Monday morning, the 16th of October, after Ethan had been in the new hospital for 4 days, Ranger Turnbow and Special Agent Bartley came to see him. He was to be transferred to Seagoville the next day. Special Agent Bartley had a digital audio recorder, and before they even exchanged pleasantries, he had switched it on. Ranger Turnbow asked Ethan how he was doing, and Ethan told them that he finally thought he would live through his injuries. Ranger Turnbow then said, "We have helped you now. It is time to help us. Let's start with your brother and his involvement in this string of kidnappings." Ethan told them that it all started when Jeff, my brother, lost his wife in a divorce. Jeff had been an alcoholic. He was a mean drunk, and his wife got sick of him and filed for divorce. Ethan said that Jeff was devastated. He tried everything to get her back. He quit drinking and totally swore off alcohol. But the damage was done, and his wife would not return to him. 4 years later, Jeff was still completely sober when he met a woman at a coffee shop in Oklahoma City, and he fell in love with her. Her name was Puella Conscribit, and she was in Oklahoma for 2 weeks. They began to hang out. She would pray in Latin at dusk, dawn, noon, and midnight, and Jeff asked her what that was all about. She said she was a priestess in the Order of Nergal, Ethan said. Jeff immediately wanted to join so he could be with this woman. She told him to write a letter asking to join and telling about himself. She told him to include everything about him. She said the important things are that you don't use alcohol or illegal drugs, that you include your net worth, that you give all your contact information, that you include any skills you have, and that you will promise your life to the Order of Nergal doing all they ask of you, Ethan told them. Ethan then told them that she asked me if I drank or used drugs, and I had told her that I did not. She then asked me to write a letter to ask to join also, and I did. This all happened one night at their house in Slaughterville about 3 years ago in March of 2020. Puella then took Jeff's letter and my letter and copied them in coded letters that were all strange symbols. She did separate pages for each letter. She then had Jeff and me sign the coded letters at the bottom, and she signed the bottom herself with her name Puella Conscribit written in regular cursive, Ethan said. She then mailed both letters in one envelope to a post office box in Montana. She told them that the Secretary of the Order of Nergal would consider our request, and if it was approved, we would hear back from him, he said. She then took us out in the backyard of Jeff's house where we started a campfire, and while Puella prayed, we burned our original letters that were not coded in the fire, he said. 2 days later, she was gone, having left Oklahoma, Ethan told them. Ethan went on to say, about 2 weeks later, we received a large envelope. Inside the envelope, there were 2 journals each with one of our first names on it. Inside the journals were handwritten Latin prayers with the translations to English underneath them. Jeff and I were given a specific prayer to fully memorize to use in identifying ourselves to the head members. We were told to use these identifiers before we talked on the phone about Order of Nergal business. Special Agent Bartley asked Ethan to tell him his identifying prayer, and Ethan said, Nergal vita mea es vis, homini spiritus mues pro te est. Special Agent Bartley then asked what it meant, and Ethan said, Nergal, you are my life force. Every breath I take is for you. Ethan went on to say that, about a week later, Jeff got a call and the guy on the other end spoke in Latin, so Jeff said his Latin prayer. The man on the other end told Jeff to call the number he gave us. Jeff called the number. A man answered and talked in Latin. Jeff recited his Latin prayer. The man said his name was Richard Nergal and that he lived in Norman, Oklahoma and wanted to visit. He told us he was 20 minutes away, Ethan said. This was the first time we met Richard Nergal. He came over and Jeff and him hit it off. Jeff had no friends to speak of and there was an instant friendship between them. Richard told Jeff of the Renati Nergal Caramonia that he wanted to put together and said that Jeff's house would be a perfect base for it, Ethan told them. Special Agent Bartley asked, what is the Renati Nergal Caramonia? Ethan told him, the Renati Nergal Caramonia was the rebirth of Nergal ceremony where Nergal would be brought back to Earth with the sacrifice of 6 purified women. When Jeff found out he would get to kidnap women, he got all into it. Richard had a large metal building built onto the back of Jeff's kitchen. What used to be the back door went into this new room. Richard put 6 beds in this room and installed the restraint chains himself. Each bed had a restraint chain, Ethan said. When the room was complete, Puella Conscribit came back over for a few days and brought the woman that tried to kill me last Thursday. Her name is Domina Curionis, and she is a high priestess in the Order of Nergal. Also, Richard's Aunt Diane came. They hung around for about 48 hours, burning incense and praying in the new room. Richard's aunt brought Jeff that large painting of Nergal during this time, Ethan said. Ethan then told them, the three women held a meeting right before they left. They told Richard, Jeff, and me that they would need 6 Native American women who must be purified for 6 months with no sex, no drugs, no alcohol, and no meat to eat. Jeff said he understood. Domina gave Richard several bottles of Rohypnol, 3 big bottles of ether, some special vials to put doses of ether in, some smaller vials to put crushed Rohypnol in, and a small special mortar and pestle that had fancy carvings on it to crush the Rohypnol tablets in. They also gave Richard some handcuffs and leg shackles and hoods. They gave us all face masks with a skull printed on them and black pants, shirts, and jackets. They said everything had been blessed with prayer and ritual. Ethan elaborated. They gave us 2 pistols. Jeff took the M9 Beretta 9mm and I took the Glock 9mm. They gave us a few boxes of ammunition and they gave Jeff a black Dodge Challenger with dark tinted windows. Jeff registered the title in his name. They said all these items were also blessed for our mission, Ethan said. Ranger Turnbow then said, tell us about abducting the women. They told us to wait 6 months before we abducted any women, so it was early July 2023 before we went out hunting. Richard, Jeff, and I would drive around at night looking for our victims. We only went out on Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday nights. It took us 2 weeks to find the first young woman. At about 3 a.m. in Chickasha, Oklahoma on July the 12th, we sat at the China Moon Cafe and watched the parking lot of Love's Country Store that is open 24 hours. Cindy Lewis pulled in and parked over near us. She went inside the store and Richard got out and dumped a vial of ether on the air conditioner intake. He found the intake in the dark with the help of a pen light, Ethan said. She came back out and started her car and sat there a while and passed out. I was driving and Jeff and Richard jumped out of the Dodge and had handcuffed her and drug her out of her car with a hood over her eyes, and when they got her in the car, I took off. We were all wearing our face masks and black clothing, Ethan said. We got her back to the house and put her in the special room, Ethan told them. They chained her by her neck to the wall by the first bed. She was there by herself for 5 weeks. We did not have any luck hunting during that time. We tried to get a victim in Verdon, Oklahoma. Richard dumped ether on her car, but she did not pass out. Possibly her air conditioner did not work. The same thing happened in Ninica. The woman did not pass out. But then at the quick stop in Moore, Oklahoma, we were able to abduct Tina Spotted Horse at about 10:15 p.m. on August the 16th. We were not having luck late at night, so we started going out earlier. Again, I was driving. Richard dumped the ether on her car, and Jeff and Richard subdued her while she was unconscious and drug her to our car, Ethan said. Then 5 weeks after that, we got Stefan Malo at about 8:45 p.m. outside the Mustang Food Mart on September the 6th. It looked like the place was too crowded, but then all the cars cleared out and Richard was able to dump ether on her car and she passed out. Richard and Jeff grabbed and subdued her, and I drove off once they got her in the car, Ethan said. We kept them chained by the neck in the special room. Jeff did not have a regular job, so he was the one who fed them. They were fed sandwich bread and were given water. I worked at the tractor supply store, and after work, I was the one who emptied their buckets, Ethan told them. For over a year, all Richard would talk about was the Renati Nergal Caramonia. Then in the middle of September, he changed. He was an archaeologist working on Highway 281 and was digging up skeletons. One day, he came over to the house and was talking about killing David Madure. He completely stopped talking about the women and had us focus all our attention on David. He was obsessed, Ethan said. Richard started taking ether and Rohypnol with him to his work. He started putting ether on David's truck, thinking it would make him wreck, but it did not work. He also started putting Rohypnol in his drink when he could, thinking it would make him wreck. I think he managed to do that twice, but soon David caught on. He did not drink anything around Richard anymore and started running his truck's air conditioner with the doors open while he waited outside the vehicle. Ethan explained. This drove Richard crazy. Finally, Richard told us that he would pay us $5,000 each to just shoot him when he was driving to his hotel from work. So in late September, we waited on Highway 281 for David's truck. I was driving and Jeff was shooting, Ethan was saying when Ranger Turnbow stopped him. Ranger Turnbow asked, Are you sure you were not shooting because the bullet they pulled from David's truck came from a Glock 9mm like they gave to you, and it matches the pistol recovered at Washington on the Brazos that you had? Ethan then changed his story and said, Yes, I was shooting, but we missed him, and he pulled into the police station. Special Agent Bartley told Ethan, You have to be honest, or the deal is off, and you can take your chances with your gang. If you want our protection, then don't lie again. Ethan apologized and went on. Shortly after we tried to shoot him from the car, like a few days, Jeff called me at work and told me the police were out in front of our house. The police busted in and killed my brother. I could not go home, so I went to Richard's house. We hid my car in his garage and fled the state in his Subaru. Ethan then said, "We stopped in the panhandle of Texas at a Walmart, and Richard got me a change of clothes. We got some food and sodas and took turns driving to California, only stopping to get gas. We paid with Richard's cash. We drove to Sausalito, California, to a house on Laurel Lane belonging to Richard's Aunt Diane. She never told me her last name, but she was the high priestess in the Order of Nergal that blessed our house. Richard was still obsessed with killing David Madure. His aunt did a locator spell and found him between Austin and Navasota," Ethan told them. Ranger Turnbow asked, "What was this spell she supposedly did? How did that work?" Ethan told them that she made candles and string and used a crystal hanging from the string she made. We chanted in Latin, and she swung the crystal over an atlas with a map of Texas. The crystal swung between Austin and Navasota. Then Diane called a man named Venator and apparently hired him to help find David." Ethan then said, "About a week later, Diane, Richard, and I packed up and drove to Texas. We spent the night in a hotel in Arizona and made it to Texas the next day. We stopped and spent the night at this Army veteran's house. His name was Chris Folsom. He spent part of the day we were there training me to be a spotter on his sniper team. He was a sniper in the Green Berets. Special Agent Bartley then broke the news that Chris Folsom had never served in the military. A real Special Forces sniper would have never missed a 100-yard shot like he did 5 times. Ethan looked like a child that had lost his favorite toy. He could not believe that Chris had lied to them like that. Ethan went on, "We spent the night at that liar's house and drove to Georgetown the next day and went to a lady named Marjorie's house at 16 Overlook Court in Georgetown, Texas. That man from Montana, Venator, was there. He planned everything. He was in charge. Special Agent Bartley held up the picture David took off the video from outside his truck at Washington on the Brazos and asked, 'Is this Venator?' Ethan said, 'Yes, that is him.' He gave us specific directions. Diane drove us to a culvert off the side of the highway, and Chris and I followed a GPS device east-northeast 67 and 12 degrees on the compass through a field to a point pinned on the GPS device, then turned southeast and walked into the wooded area about 100 yards to another pin location on the GPS device. We were supposed to shoot David with 1 shot and then go back to the highway and wait in a ravine by the culvert for Diane to pick us up. But that did not happen. Chris kept missing David. Then I saw a cop. I shot with my Glock at the cop, but missed. I guess I got shot then. I woke up in the hospital, and now I am here." Ranger Turnbow asked about the lady that tried to kill him, and Ethan said, "I was laying there at the hospital in Brenham when Domina came in. I recognized her from Jeff's house when they blessed the special room. I thought it might be a rescue attempt, but then I saw her stick a big syringe in my IV line. I pulled the IV out of my hand and yelled for help. Domina pulled the syringe out of the IV line and went to jab me with it. I managed to catch her hand by the wrist and held her off long enough for the cop to come in and subdue her. She fought like hell, and it took 2 of them to finally get her in cuffs, and still she struggled the whole time spewing Latin curses at them. That's pretty much everything up to where they moved me to this hospital," Ethan said. Special Agent Bartley and Ranger Turnbow thanked Ethan for being honest with them. They told him that he was moving tomorrow to a federal facility and would be put in protective custody there, and they left. After Ethan's interview, Ranger Turnbow applied for a search warrant for Marjorie Loverich's house on 16 Overlook Court in Georgetown, Texas. At the same time, Special Agent Bartley applied for search warrants for Venator Aquilex's house at 110 Bros Road in Lone Pine, Montana, and Diane Hayward Smithland's house at 113 Laurel Lane in Sausalito, California. The warrants covered any documents, electronic devices, computers, weapons, vehicles, and poisons, among other things. The searches were initiated in the early morning hours of the 17th of October. At 5 a.m., Pacific Time federal agents raided Diane's house in Sausalito. Nobody was home. They found Richard's car in the garage, a trove of journals. Some were in Latin, and some were in a strange code. There were paintings of Assyrian and Egyptian gods, and a collection of ornate specialized tools used in witchcraft. The paintings and tools were not illegal, so they only took Richard's car and the journals in Latin and code. An hour later at 5 odd a.m., Mountain Time federal agents raided Venator's home in Lone Pine, Montana. Again, nobody was home. They took a computer and a trove of journals that were in a strange code, a cache of 7 pistols. Also, the house was filled with paintings of Egyptian and Assyrian gods and what appeared to be religious items. Then at 5 a.m. Central Time, the Texas Rangers in concert with the Georgetown police raided Marjorie's home. Nobody was home at the residence. They found 1 coded journal and 2 Latin journals. There were no electronic devices except for a weather radio. Again, there were paintings of Assyrian and Egyptian gods and religious items. They also found Domina's suitcase full of clothing. There were 3 sets of scrubs with 3 different hospital logos on them. 3 work badges for area hospitals with 3 different names on them but the same picture. It was a picture of Domina. There were 2 coded journals and 1 Latin journal. And some loose medical supplies including 3 vials of insulin. 1 vial was empty, and 1 was half full and the 3rd was full. The Latin and coded journals were sent to the FBI cryptanalysis department. The Latin journals were found to mostly be prayers, spells, and recipes. The coded journals were quickly deciphered. Most of the coded journals did not have spaces between the words, but the one journal found at Marjorie's house did have spaces between the words, which made it easy to figure out that it was simply 3 separate alphabets that switched between each letter of the word. The coded journal at Marjorie's house was a diary that outlined her daily life and did not have evidence of any crimes until Monday the 2nd of October, when Venator arrived at her house and used it as a base to plan the attempted murder of David. Most of the journals from Diane's house were diaries that had mundane descriptions of her prayer times and what she had done on that day. The only crime they were evidence of was that she hid Ethan and Richard in her home for almost 2 weeks. However, the coded journals found at Venator's house had names and addresses of members as well as the letters they wrote when they joined. There were over 100 members listed. There was evidence of crimes such as the kidnapping of the 3 women in Oklahoma and the plans for their eventual sacrifice. There was, however, no mention of where they all could be found at this time. So, when Special Agent Bartley got a list of the members of the Order of Nergal from the Cryptanalysis Department on Wednesday the 25th of October, he began to call the members on their phones in hopes of finding where the fugitives had gone. The only problem was that he did not know the right Latin phrases that they used to identify themselves, so at first his efforts were fruitless.